Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Shireen Ash. I'm a librarian at the Corte Madera Library, and I'm very pleased today to welcome Laura Hibden, who is the Family Services Manager of the Alzheimer's Association for Northern California and Northern Nevada, to give a presentation I'm sure you'll find very helpful and useful, understanding and responding to dementia-related behavior. The program runs about 90 minutes, and there'll be time during the program and at the end for questions. Please put all your questions in the chat. I will read them out, and please stay muted during the presentation so that we can all hear. I really appreciate that. There'll be some handouts that are available to you. You can email me. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'll email them to you. There's some very useful supporting material for the program. So I think that you'll appreciate hearing that. And with that, I think, Lauren, you can start your presentation, and we'll have some breaks, and I will see you then. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Shireen, and thank you to the Corte Madera Library for partnering with us on bringing a number of programs to the community. This program, Understanding and Responding to Dementia-Related Behaviors, is going to really focus on some of the more common behaviors and more challenging behaviors that you might see with Alzheimer's disease, and some strategies to use to help address them. So we're going to, by the end of today's program, you're going to be able to identify some of the common triggers, some things that you might not be noticing that are triggering some behavior and that are associated with dementia. And then explain a 4-step process for assessing and identifying those challenging behaviors. And then we're going to take that 4-step process and we're going to apply it to some common dementia-related behaviors, some of the ones that we see kind of more often that family caregivers tell us about in dealing with dementia. So some of the more difficult behaviors for caregivers to understand and address arise in the middle stage of the disease. And behavioral symptoms can be caused by many different things. They can be caused by physical discomfort, such as fatigue, hunger, thirst, constipation, a full bladder, uncomfortable room temperature. But behaviors can also be triggered by overstimulation or understimulation, sadness, loss, boredom, isolation, changes to routine or changes to the living situation. And although the cause can be hard to sort out, it's really helpful to take the steps that we're going to outline in today's program to understand and respond to the needs that are being expressed through the behavior. So if you think about behavior in kind of its base form, it's a form of communication, and as our language in the dementia realm, as the language starts to fail, behavior becomes more present because, they're still trying to communicate the need, the unmet need, and they are doing so through behavior. And we're going to present kind of an outline of some steps that you can take as a family caregiver, and then apply those steps to the more challenging behaviors that you might see in dementia. So let's start with that 4-step process. So we're going to explore how to understand, excuse me, and address some more common dementia-related behaviors by using the 4-step process that you see on the screen. So the first step is to detect and connect. The second is to address the physical needs, and then address the emotional needs. And step 4, which is very important and not to be skipped, is to reassess and plan for next time. And Shireen mentioned that you can email her for the supporting materials. And so what you would receive is the slide deck to follow along with this presentation, but also there's a workbook that's associated with this. And so when we used to do this presentation in live and in person, it was a paper workbook that you could actually take this 4-step process and apply it to the behaviors that you're seeing. And it has kind of a worksheet to use this 4-step process. So I highly recommend emailing Shireen to get that workbook if you are seeing some dementia-related behaviors. So let's talk now about the first step in the process. And the first step is to really join the person in their reality. And this means really trying to see the world through their eyes rather than your own. And so when we do remember that behavior is a form of communication, we know that if we could see the world exactly as the person with dementia is seeing the world, if we were experiencing what they experience in the way that they do, the behavior might make perfect sense. And since they are the ones with the disease, we can't expect them to accommodate our needs. We can't expect them to say, this is what I'm trying to express to you, or this is what I need. Instead, we have to try to enter their world and connect with them where they are and do our best to decode what they are trying to express to us. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, we're not going to be able to figure out where the behavior is coming from or what the person is trying to communicate through their behavior. But it's our job to make every attempt to try to understand the behavior before intervening, so we know how to help and how we can be the most helpful. So to understand the behavior that you're seeing, we want to start with some detective work to try to determine what might have triggered that behavior. So this is where you're going to ask yourself quite a lot of questions. But who was present when the behavior took place? What happened just before the behavior began? What were you doing just before the behavior began? What was the person with dementia doing right before the behavior began? What happened immediately after the behavior took place? How did you respond? Where did the behavior take place? What was the person seeing, hearing, touching? Does the behavior, is it repetitive? Are you seeing this behavior happen more than once? If so, when does it tend to occur? Is there a particular time of day when you're seeing, is it early evening or is it first thing in the morning that you're seeing these behaviors tend to occur? And then how did you react? Was your response helpful or did it start to go in a direction that you weren't really hoping for? And as you're kind of asking yourself these questions, you're wanting to connect with the person. So you're assessing the situation, you're asking yourself these questions internally, but you're also approaching the person with respect and treating the person as if you would want to be treated in the same situation. You want to come to the person from the front, and you might need to identify yourself if necessary. You want to move to their physical level and use eye contact. Make sure that you have their attention and use your body language to convey a friendly approach. I myself, when I'm not on a little Zoom screen, am 5'10". So if I approach someone who's sitting, I can seem a little intimidating. So I want to get down on their level, make sure I have their attention, and make sure that I'm approaching with a calm and respectful demeanor. The person is going to respond so much more to your tone of voice and your body language than the actual words that you're speaking. So it's really important that you're being both kind and helpful in your language and in your emotional state. Sometimes we're saying one thing, but our body language and our tone of voice is giving off a completely different message. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to all aspects of how we are communicating and approaching the situation. So as you've kind of started that detect and connect process, you're then going to address any physical needs. So we address the person's needs and what they might be trying to express to us, and we always start with the physical. And you want to know if this behavior could be triggered by physical pain or a medical condition. And so you want to consult a physician to identify any causes related to medication changes, or illness. Often, I hear from family caregivers, I'm all of a sudden there's just this real big behavior change. And if you're seeing a change that seems very rapid and overnight, often there could be something else going on besides the Alzheimer's or related dementia. So you really want to make sure that you're not just saying, this is the new way that life is now with dementia. You want to look into it to make sure that it's not something else that could be treated and reversed. And then you want to note any signs of injury due to incidents that might have, happened when you weren't, when you didn't see. A recent fall. For example, I had a brother-sister team that were caregiving for their mom, and one would do the day and one would do the night shift. And apparently during the night shift, mom fell out of bed and fractured her hip. And so when the day shift takes over and tries to get mom out of bed and dressed, she's immediately striking out, saying, no, 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 no. And this is a very big change from her, normal behavior. And so they were wondering, is mom just now aggressive? No, mom was trying to express that she was in a lot of pain from a fractured hip that happened over the night and was not able to express that verbally. So her way to express that was through striking out and saying no, no, no over and over again. So you want to look for pain first. And people with Alzheimer's disease often experience pain from undiagnosed urinary tract infections, compression fractures, arthritis, poorly fitting dentures, indigestion, constipation, and other medical conditions. And someone with dementia isn't always the best self-report. They can't necessarily be able to recognize or talk about their symptoms fully. So that's where you come in to be the detective and try to figure out if this could be caused by a physical need or physical pain. Also, behavior may change due to a reaction to a new medication or an interaction between several medications. So you kind of wanting to ask yourself, has there been any medication changes? Has there been anything else that could possibly have happened that is triggering this behavior? And then note any unusual behaviors or symptoms and report them promptly to the person's doctor to treat or rule out any medical causes for the person's pain. And then, once you've kind of started to address physical pain, you want to look for physical discomfort next. And that's physical discomfort due to environmental issues. And that could be restrictive clothing. It could be lighting problems, glare or too dark, so the shadows are being cast, or uncomfortable room temperature. So kind of putting yourself environmentally in their shoes as well. And additional common causes of discomfort include hunger or thirst, or the need to get up and stretch and move, the room being too noisy or even too quiet, being in an uncomfortable position, or even just too much commotion going on around them. So if you kind of think about, there's that sweet spot between not being overwhelmed and not being underwhelmed. And behavior often comes when the person is kind of moved out of that sweet spot in either direction. If you're overwhelming or underwhelming the person, you might see behavior change. So kind of looking at some of those common causes of discomfort. And then you want to just adjust the environment as necessary to try to make the person more comfortable. Changing the temperature, turning on a light, turning off a light, doing the things that you can do to make the environment a little bit more friendly. And then, as you're doing that physical assessment, you're continuing to connect with the person. So you're maintaining that sense of calm, that soothing presence. And this is really particularly useful for helping someone with dementia to reduce their level of agitation or upset if it's related to pain. If they are, if you think of it like a dial and they're turned up to 9 or 10, your calming presence can help just dial that down a little so that it can then be addressed. And then once you've addressed the physical needs, and let's say you've fixed the environment, you realize there's nothing physically causing this behavior change, then you're going to move on to the emotional needs. And we're going to think about, how does the situation feel to the person? And this can be the basis for a behavioral reaction. So then I challenge you to focus on the feelings in your response instead of the facts of the situation. We often will say things like, oh, that's not happening, or let me tell you what your reality is or should be. And it's much more important to focus. Oops. Sorry about that. I clicked too far ahead. But it's much more important to focus on the feelings with the situation and what it feels to the person with dementia, and not on the facts of the situation. Unless it's a safety concern, it's much more important to be kind than it is to be correct. And so you really want to avoid correcting the person if what they're saying is inaccurate or doesn't match your reality. Remember that this whole four-step process starts by trying to connect with the person, trying to join them where they are, and telling them that they're wrong or that your reality doesn't match up with their reality will only escalate the situation and convey that you don't understand and you're not even trying to understand. It might feel dismissive and they might become defensive. They are going to try harder and harder to convince you, and it could escalate the situation. So rather than focusing on the facts of the situation, focusing more on what the situation feels like to the person, and let the person know that you're here with them and that you're safe together, that you're a team, that you're going to figure this out, that that they are safe with you. Reinforcing that you're here to help, that you're going to try to make the changes that are needed to make the person feel more comfortable. And although you might not understand the exact meaning of the person's message, you usually can identify the feeling behind the behavior. Sometimes we get so caught up in the moment and trying to fix it that we kind of overlook it. But if I can tell you one thing, if you take a breath and take a step back from the interaction, you can often find out what is this behavior? What is the feeling behind the behavior? What are they trying to express emotionally? And addressing the emotion behind the behavior to help the person feel less overwhelmed and less alone. And this is going to help you to both de-escalate the situation together, which will then free up that energy that's being used toward the behavior to be directed elsewhere. And, even if you're not able to get to the root of the reason for why this behavior occurred or what they're trying to convey, they're going to get the feeling that you are trying to help. And just that feeling of not feeling alone and feeling supported and heard might be enough to reduce the level of frustration and anxiety that they're experiencing. And then, finally helping that person to redirect some of the energy that they're expressing into something more soothing and enjoyable. So don't just say, oh, here, let's play bingo. You like bingo. Until you've addressed the needs, because it will also feel like you're not paying attention to what they're trying to express to you. So yes, you do want to redirect the energy into a more soothing, enjoyable activity, but you can't do that without first addressing, what they might be trying to convey to you. So we're going to hear a video, and the woman's name is Rose, and she talks about how she redirected some of her mother's agitation into activities that kept her engaged with the family.
She was part of the family, she'd fold towels, and she'd fold towels all day long some days. Just, put them back in the basket, and then she'd give them to her, here's some more towels. And it may sound like it's cruel, but look, it kept her busy. It kept her movements going. It kept her, just kept her occupied, and it made her feel wanted and that she was contributing. We created a routine for her that worked for her around her agitation and, her sleep patterns. So every day she was in the same routine for the most part, and every day she did something. She was always in the kitchen every day helping do something. Sometimes she'd rinse dishes, but she was always near the kitchen sink because she spent most of her life in front of the kitchen sink. Now she was just doing it in different ways. And going for a walk, going out in the car for a drive, walking around the yard, watering plants. Those are all things that she did, and we just had her continue doing them.
I think, some of the important things that Rose addresses there is the importance of creating activities to allow her mom to stay busy and channel her energy, and keeping a routine that worked for her. Not everyone is going to be happy folding towels all day long or, being in front of the sink doing dishes, but kind of finding a routine that worked for her to keep her engaged and involved. I think one of the things that we tend to do as family caregivers is like, oh, I'll just take that on because it's harder for you, or it's not as fast, or you're not doing it to the same level that you used to perform that activity. It leaves that feeling of being needed and that feeling of being valued doesn't go away with dementia. And so kind of finding a activity that could keep her feeling needed and feeling like she's contributing to the family unit. And so the last part of that 4-step process is the planning and assessing for next time. And the process is to really ask yourself, did my new responses help the situation? When I was doing this 4-step process, did it work? Did it turn out better than it used to? So you're going back to kind of detecting and connecting and joining the person's reality. Does the situation look different to the person with dementia than it did before you intervened? Do I need to explore other possible causes of the behavior or other possible solutions? If I had to do this all over again, what would I do differently? Is there something that I would have tried, as my number one intervention? Or, did I do everything perfect? Would I give myself a gold star? So, and, once you've settled on interventions that are effective, you want to recognize that this type of issue may arise again. So you want to plan to reassess at periodic intervals. And your plan might include, how am I going to recognize the signs of this issue returning? Was there something I might have missed the first time because, I wasn't expecting this and it kind of seemed like it came out of nowhere? How quickly do I need to respond next time? Should I take a few breaths, or do I need to just jump right in? What worked? What should I try next time, and in what order? If you tried something and it seemed to work, maybe you're trying that first rather than your 6th option of engaging. And so how to really assess the effectiveness of your interventions, but also, what do I do if everything I'm trying isn't working and the situation is escalating? If I'm feeling ineffective and I'm feeling like this is not going the direction that it needs to go, what do I do? Who is the person that I call for help? Who do I call to get assistance, that the person needs if I'm not able to meet it myself? And I think, I had a woman, she's caring for her husband, and she was saying, she thinks about baseball with behaviors and kind of, she's never going to hit a home run when she gets that first crazy pitch. But once she's been pitched that same crazy pitch over and over again, she has a higher chance of at least getting on base. So she said, I never respond to the behavior the right way the first time. And she said, and probably not the second or third time either. But by the time the 4th time comes around, I'm ready to do my best to fix this behavior and help him through it. So this reassessing and planning for next time allows you to maybe do better the 2nd time rather than the 4th or 5th time. And really, these 4 steps can be applied to any behavior experienced by someone with dementia. And so we're going to take a look at how the steps could be applied to the most common dementia-related behaviors. And we're going to start with anxiety or agitation. And anxiety or agitation is, restlessness or pacing, distress, or over-reliance on caregivers, what you might call shadowing. So someone, you're the caregiver and the person that you provide care for is following you around the house. Even when you're trying to go to the bathroom, they might be right outside the door waiting for you. Kind of just over-reliance and needing that caregiver to feel grounded. And when someone with dementia is restless or pacing or excessively reliant on caregivers, they could be expressing anxiety or agitation. So we're going to take a look at a vignette. The woman's name is Anne, and we're going to talk through how to use this 4-step process to address this situation with Anne's anxiety. So Anne is a 75-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease. And every evening she's in the hallway of her house, pacing back and forth, up and down the hallways, saying, I need to go, I need to go, I need to go. She doesn't stop walking even for meals. Her family gives her a sandwich to eat while she's walking. And she uses the cane, and she's lost weight from not eating and that, increase in physical exercise. Her family asks Anne to sit. And as soon as she sits, she's immediately back up again, pacing the hallways. A little background about Anne is that she was a nurse for 40 years, and she worked the night shift. Her agitation appears to begin every evening at the same time. So if we were going to take this 4-step process and apply it to Anne's situation, you want to first detect and connect. So listening to the frustration, trying to understand that feeling that Anne is expressing. She's saying, I need to go, I need to go, I need to go. We don't know where she needs to go. So we're trying to identify any triggers for that behavior. What you want to ask yourself, the who, what, where, when, and how questions. Who's there? Her family. Where is it happening? In her hallway at her house. When is it happening? The same time every night. How are they responding? They're asking her to sit down, but that doesn't seem to be fixing it. And you want to check for sundowning. Sundowning is difficulty in the late afternoon or early evening. We see this, it's pretty common in the late afternoon, early evening for confusion to increase, for behavior change to increase. So exploring whether these behaviors occur around a certain time of day, around certain people, around certain activities, kind of figure out, is there a common thread that connects this behavior? And then we start to address her physical issues first. We want to look for pain, infection, medication interactions, any other medical issues, and you want to intervene as needed. Many times, abrupt surges in agitation can result from pain from a medical condition, particularly a urinary tract infection. And like I said earlier, someone with dementia isn't always the best at reporting their own symptoms or their own, their own medical issues. And urinary tract infections occur frequently in older adults, and even more so in those with dementia. So if the shift occurs suddenly, you want to check with a doctor for an assessment. And you want to make sure that the person is involved in activities during the day. So this can help to discharge some of that energy and help the person to feel tired at the end of the day, leading to less agitation, less anxiety in the evening, if their energy has been expended during the day. And you want to check to see if the person is hungry, thirsty, or lacking social interaction. This can trigger concern in a person, and that can escalate to anxiety or agitation. So to avoid this, we want to make sure that we're providing the person with access to appropriate healthy snacks and beverages and offer them periodically. Kind of if you are someone who, the person snacks on fruit, maybe having that fruit bowl out on the counter or on the table rather than, in the refrigerator in the drawer, or, kind of having that easily accessible for the person. And because constipation can also trigger agitation, you want to make sure that their diet includes plenty of fruit and fiber and fluids throughout the day to make sure and be careful that they have sufficient exercise. You can also ask a dietitian to work with the person's physical therapist or another member of the person's medical team, if this is like kind of an ongoing issue for them. And then exploring the area surrounding the person. Try to see if there was anything that has triggered physical discomfort or distress. And so once we've addressed those physical needs, we're then moving on to the emotional needs. Again, we're acknowledging that you understand that the person's feeling frustrated or they're feeling upset, and that you want to help. And you want to try to help them feel more comfortable. So check to see if something has happened to upset the person and trigger maybe hurt feelings, anger, worry, frustration, loneliness, any other types of distress. And join the person physically. So if the person, Anne in this case, is walking up and down the hall, join her walking up and down the hall, matching her pace. And if the person is kind of speaking loudly or rapidly, you want to make sure that you're keeping up with their level of communication as well, but you're maintaining that calm voice and using those reassuring words. Someone with dementia really communicates with emotions, and you are kind of that emotional baseline for them. So if you are approaching and you're getting anxious or you're getting agitated in kind of how you approach, the situation's gonna escalate. So you want to make sure that you're approaching with a calm, reassuring tone, body language, and words. And if you can't make a change to the situation fully, let's say you can't get Anne to sit down and stay seated, you might be able to focus on changing the person's level of agitation. So you might be able to bring it down, you're turning the temperature of that agitation down a bit by comforting them, distracting them. And once the level of agitation has been reduced a bit, that's when you offer to engage in a more soothing activity that the person tends to enjoy. And so that's going to look a little different for each person. And if the person is fearful or lonely or sad, providing reassurance and companionship can help. So when the person senses that someone understands and is in agreement, is trying to help, is on my side, I'm going to become calmer and more relaxed. Kind of just keeping that calm voice. Let's figure this out together. You're safe with me. Let's, kind of just reassuring and calming. And finally, reassessing and planning for next time. Did my new responses of joining Anne while she's walking down the hall help? Thinking about her history as a nurse, and she's experiencing agitation at a certain time every night. Is there a way to get her involved in something right before that time frame, so that way she's distracted and engaged in something and not feeling like she needs to pace up and down the hall? Or do I need to explore other potential causes or other potential solutions to this behavior? What would I do differently if I had to do it all over again? And you can assume that the person will feel anxious or agitated again in the future. So you really want to make a plan for addressing those feelings and kind of cueing in if there's something that maybe you might have missed that can signal to you like, oh, we might be dealing with some anxiety or agitation coming. So maybe I can get her involved and engaged before that. And also always in your plan, what do I do if the situation escalates or my interventions are ineffective? Next, we're going to apply the same 4-step process to confusion or suspicion. When someone with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia is confused, they might not recognize familiar people. They might not recognize familiar places, like their own home, and they might not recognize familiar objects, familiar things. So when this confusion is accompanied by suspicion, the person may accuse others of stealing, of being unfaithful, or other accusations. And it can be really difficult for a caregiver, someone who's providing hands-on help, emotional support, if the person cannot remember who that caregiver is or what that caregiver's character is like. It can be really hard not to take it personal. So we're going to look at Anne again. And she's beginning to experience some confusion and suspicion. And we'll see how we can apply this 4-step process to that. So when Anne's family comes to visit, and evening is beginning, she becomes really suspicious because there are some people that are trying to get into her house. They're watching her through their big picture window in the front room. So she becomes suspicious of her family because the family's not making those people go away. So she feels like they must all be in cahoots together, because if they weren't, then her family would ask those people to stop, looking at her through the window. So if we are going to use this 4-step process, we want to detect and connect, trying to stay as calm as you can as you're exploring the situation. And so what is that confused or suspicious behavior? When is it happening? With whom? Where? How does it manifest itself? So kind of we're seeing this behavior in the evenings when her family is there. And in the front room, she's seeing people looking in through the window at her. And so she's starting to become suspicious. Check the environment for any possible potential sources of confusion, and try to discern whether the person's reacting to something that's happening in the present, or something that is imagined, or something that's happened in the past, and having those emotional reactions to it. So if the trigger is current, explore how the person is interpreting the occurrence. For example, if the person has misplaced something and they, are accusing someone of stealing that item, you're kind of figuring out that maybe their brain is telling them that the item has been stolen because they don't have a memory of misplacing that item or setting it down somewhere. If the trigger is something imagined or in the past, you can explore what that situation meant to the person. What was the emotional tie there? And you want to then address those physical issues first. And we're ruling out any medical explanation, infection, low blood sugar level, delirium, anything that could be causing this increased confusion and suspicion. If the person is experiencing pain, see if you can intervene in a way that will make the person more comfortable while you're figuring out what is the root of this behavior. If the person is being given pain medication, consult with the doctor right away about possible side effects. In addition, ask about any possible or potential interactions between medications or side effects if there's been any recent change to medications. And then you want to address for physical discomfort due to the environment, overstimulation, fatigue, etc. So kind of just putting yourself in their shoes. Has this been a long day? That we noted that Anne's whole entire family is coming over and it's the evening and maybe she's tired or it's too overstimulating. And then modify the environment if needed. Sometimes mirrors and windows, things that, have a reflection can be problematic, especially, if lighting, is an issue. So if they're looking in the mirror and they're not recognizing themselves, sometimes covering the mirrors or taking the mirrors down off the walls. If in this case, in this vignette, Anne was seeing the family's reflection in those big picture windows, and she was interpreting those people as looking in and trying to, get into her home. So this was avoided by simply closing the drapes each evening before they would go into that room, turning on the lights, closing the drapes, kind of switching from day to evening before Anne would then go into the room. And you really want to respond with a brief and accurate explanation, but avoid arguing. And offer corrections as gentle suggestions or answers. So if you escalate your energy level, the person's going to match that, and they're going to increase their energy level to match yours, and it can, go in another direction. Sometimes showing photos or other reminders can help to trigger the person's recognition of what may have happened. Sometimes this will work to help explain what's happening, and other times this might feel like you still don't understand what's happening for me as the person with dementia. So, this will work for some and not for all. If items are lost and no one can find them, see if you can provide a solution by duplicating that item, providing multiples of often used items. I have a gentleman in one of our support groups here who his wife kept misplacing their can opener. And he ended up going out and buying 6 can openers and hiding them in different parts of the house so that if she misplaced the one that was in the kitchen, he always had a backup can opener. I mean, I don't know if you want to buy 6 can openers, and not everything that gets lost is as easily replaceable as a can opener, but if you can have a duplicate item, it can sometimes help. Like here, I found these glasses while we look for your other glasses. Kind of just, it can de-escalate the emotions. Remember, this really is about diffusing the situation, not about convincing the person of the truth. So, closing the blinds in Anne's situation helped to de-escalate the situation. If her family would have said, no, that wasn't people looking in, that was clearly us, it was a reflection. And if you keep trying to explain it and use rational thought and trying to convince her of the truth, it's not necessarily going to fix the issue. It might cause a new behavioral issue because you're not trying to understand where she's coming from. You're not joining her reality. And so after you've addressed those physical needs, you're going to switch to address the emotional needs and let the person know that you understand that they are upset and in what ways. Sometimes helping to just name that emotion or name that feeling for them. Let the person know that you're going to do your best to take care of the situation. Repeat this message as much as needed for the person to begin to calm down. different variations of that same, we're in this together, you're safe with me, I'm going to do everything I can to help fix this. And remember, you have entered the person's reality. So let them know that you're here to help, that you're on their side, and agree and acknowledge that you understand and apologize as needed. For example, I am so sorry this is happening, Mom. I'm going to see what I can do to fix it. We'll fix this together. So I'm not apologizing for my portion of anything because I'm not part of the problem, but I am trying to be part of the solution. So I'm apologizing because I can see that this is causing you distress. So I am so sorry. We're going to fix this. We're going to work on it together. And try not to take the person's confusion or behavior personally. This is very tough to do, much easier said than done. But it's difficult when you're the target of their accusations. But remember, this is what the disease is causing those accusations. And it's not a reflection of the person's trust in you or what the person feels is your character. So if you can, do your best to kind of separate the disease process from the person so that you can kind of take a step back emotionally and get some emotional distance for yourself. And then finally, after you've addressed the physical needs and then you've addressed those emotional needs, you're going to plan for next time. Ask yourself, did my new response help? Do I need to explore other possible causes, other possible solutions? What would I do differently if I had to do it all over again? And assume that the person will feel confused and suspicious again in the future. And so making a plan to address that. If the behavior never comes back again, then you have a plan in place and you never need it. You have that backup plan, but plan to have it come back again. So before we move on to the next behavior, Shireen, I just wanted to pause and see if there are any questions in the chat that I should address before we move on.
So there are not any questions in the chat, but if you have a question at this point about any of the information that Lauren's provided, now would be a good time. There's a lot of content there, great deal of specificity, which I found very, very helpful myself. So if any of you have a question that's that you'd like to address to Lauren, please put it in the chat. And I just want to mention that in the chat, I have put the contact information for the Alzheimer's Association and also my email, so that if you have follow-up questions that you'd like me to forward to Lauren, or if you'd like the accompanying handouts, please feel free to email me and I'll send them to you. So at this point, I don't see anything in the chat, Lauren. So
All right.
You want to carry on?
Yeah, okay. So
Okay,
we're going to
great.
move on to aggression next. And sometimes a person with Alzheimer's can experience aggressive behavior. And this could be verbal, it could be physical, or it could be both verbal and physical aggression. And there might be a trigger for the behavior that you can identify, but there's going to be some times when it may seem that this behavior has completely come out of the blue, that this is appearing for no reason. So we have to figure out what could possibly be triggering this aggression. So we're going to look at Anne again. And in this instance, it's Anne and her husband, Bill, as they deal with an incident of Anne's aggressive behavior. And then we'll apply that 4-step process. So Anne's husband, Bill, is standing at the back of the room. He is leaning against the wall with his arms crossed and he's watching television. Anne walks into the room and she tells him sharply, "You aren't the boss of me." Bill just ignores the comment and continues to watch television. So Anne comes closer to him. She raises her voice and she says, "You can't tell me what to do." Bill still doesn't respond. He continues to watch television. And Anne comes up to Bill and she hits him on the arm with a balled fist. Prior to her dementia diagnosis and dementia symptoms, Anne was really quite calm by nature, would never have exhibited this type of behavior, and it feels like it's out of the blue for Bill. She continues to come at Bill, who retreats from her and has locked himself in the bathroom numerous times to avoid conflict. He doesn't have a cell phone on him, and he knows that, what's happening. He's not handling it wonderfully because he's trapped in the bathroom, but he doesn't really know how to respond. So if we take this 4-step process to help Bill get out of the bathroom and address this behavior, we're going to start by trying to identify any immediate trigger for the aggression. Did something happen that frightened or alarmed the person? And knowing in the back of your mind that this may not be a logical response, but rather an automatic reaction to something that the person is perceiving. Kind of that fight or flight is being triggered, and what is triggering that? We don't know what Bill was watching on television, but sometimes if, the content on the television is disturbing and the person with dementia can't separate that from what's happening in their world, that can sometimes lead to behavior. So we need to figure out what could possibly be causing this trigger. And for Bill, it seems like it came out of the blue because he was just trying to enjoy the television program. So you're asking yourself those who, what, when, where, and how questions to really explore the situation and try to be the detective. It can help to gently say the person's name and let them know that you understand and you're here to help before attempting to intervene. Kind of just saying, addressing them. In this case, and I'm going to try to help. Like, we're going to figure this out. I'm sorry that this is happening. That you feel frustrated. Kind of just trying to calm the situation. Apologize when it seems that that's going to help to calm the person. You might be apologizing for something that you did not do, but your apology is a reflection of their reality, not yours. And that reality is the most important one for joining this 4-step process for addressing behavior. So as you're kind of trying to detect and connect and you're asking yourself these questions, you want to address the physical issues first. So we're ruling out any medical causes. Sometimes people will lash out if they're in pain. The good example was the one I gave about having a fractured hip, and she's immediately in the morning trying to strike out and tell the daughter, stop, leave me alone, but doesn't have the verbal ability to say, hey, I fell and I fractured my hip. So you want to make sure you're ruling out physical pain. And then limit or remove any distractions. So in this case, it would be good for Bill to just click off that television and try to turn and address Anne and figure out what could be causing this before it escalates to aggression, physical aggression. So this is when you're kind of screening the environment for any obvious triggers, excess noise, changes to a usual schedule, something the person might be perceiving as a threat, and make any adjustments that you can safely. And be sure that you're protecting everyone involved so that no one gets hurt. You may need to ask if there's children in the home. You might need to ask them to leave the room or ask for additional people to come in and provide assistance. Part of your role here is really to ensure everyone's safety. And so just kind of making sure that all parties are as safe as possible. And then you want to address those emotional needs. So you're screening for emotional triggers. People often act aggressively when they perceive that there's danger, or they're scared or surprised or alarmed or in pain. So we want to be aware that some of those triggers might not be directly clear to you. You sometimes need to do a whole lot of digging, and even when you're digging, it's not always going to be, oh, that totally clicks. I get that in my rational mind. So this is where we're focusing on the feelings and not the facts of the situation. How does this feel to Anne? Not why did Anne punch Bill in the arm? What is happening? What's triggering this behavior change? And you want to be positive and reassuring, letting the person know that you're here for them, that you're going to stay to work out the situation. And sometimes when you feel like you've said that, say it again. that alone can help to de-escalate a situation. And then you're reassessing and planning for next time. Once you've settled on an intervention that's effective in calming the person and reducing their aggression, recognize that this behavior is likely to return and may increase in degree. So today, and hit Bill on the arm, but it might come back and it might be increased. That aggressiveness could increase. So we want to have a plan so that you avoid being taken by surprise should this behavior come back again. And particularly with aggressive behavior, having a plan in place is really crucial. You want to be sure to include, what do I do if the behavior escalates dramatically? The best way to avoid a difficult or even dangerous situation is to take some steps to ensure the safety even before that first incident of aggression takes place. Not everyone is going to experience aggression, but it's good to have a plan in place for an emergency. Just as if we plan for fires or we plan for earthquakes, kind of thinking about what's our emergency plan should aggression enter our lives. That could look like alerting the neighbors about the person's condition and anticipated behaviors. It could be alerting the first responders, the local first responders, to let them know about the person's diagnosis, so that if there is a call coming from you in the future, that they would know that there is dementia involved. It helps to keep a charged cell phone with you at all times. Bill got trapped in the bathroom and he wasn't able to get out because Anne is very upset on the other end of that door. You could also purchase an extra battery and keep them charged and, out promptly. So you can be able to have a cell phone or a phone available with you. Even one of those push button alarms, personal alarms, that, they for falls and things like that, often it can help with caregivers to get help to bring to the home. If there are any guns in the home, get rid of the guns and ammunition. Police must assume that a gun is loaded and they have to take the appropriate action. So it could have disastrous results. So if there are guns in the home, making sure that those are disposed of. Consider getting that personal security alarm. And honestly, at some point, the person might not be able to be cared for at home. If Anne is experiencing this aggressive behavior and it's starting to wear on Bill and Bill's not knowing how to respond, there's a possibility that Anne might need to be placed. And finding care for folks with aggressive behavior is not easy. So it can help to meet with your local Alzheimer's Association staff to discuss alternatives for care in the area and make a plan for the future. We're going to hear Rose again, and she talks about how her husband helped her to deal with her mom's aggressive behavior.
On the tough days, my husband and I would switch off. And my mom had forgotten all her English and had gone back to speaking only Greek. So she just spoke Greek, and my husband doesn't speak Greek, so it was perfect. So when she was agitated and she was cussing and yelling and saying all kinds of obnoxious things, my husband couldn't understand, so to him it didn't matter. So when she was in that mode, we'd switch off, and he'd take her for a drive. She'd stare out the window, eat fries, and she'd be fine. And it would give me a break to really decompress from some of the stuff she was saying, that I know she was just saying them, their words, but I'm a human being as well, and I was taking them personally.
I think the biggest thing that she mentions there is how important it can be for someone who has a little bit more of an emotional distance from the person to be able to swoop in and help when the situation starts to escalate or starts to go in a direction that's starting to burn you out as the caregiver. And I think it's just really kind of identifying who would be that person in your life. And if you don't have that person, maybe it's calling in community resources for making sure that you do have respite. And remember that even though the person is acting this way because of the disease, you are going to have feelings associated with that. Even if you are really good at separating the disease process from the person, you're human, and you will have feelings of resentment and frustration that will need to be dealt with. So kind of helping to get someone with some emotional distance can be helpful. And usually behaviors that are associated with dementia are upsetting or can be upsetting, but are mostly harmless. But this is not always the case. And so, in more rare situations, a person with dementia may become dangerous to themselves or others. So if the person is putting themselves or other people in danger, it's really crucial to get help immediately. You want to call 911 when more help is urgently needed to contain the person's risky behavior. It can feel scary or even silly to be doing this on behalf of the person that you care about when you're trying to deal with their behavior. But 911 is really meant to keep everyone safe. So it's your right and your responsibility to call when the situation has escalated to a crisis level and people's safety is at risk. But when you do call 911, if you do call 911, you want to make sure that you tell the dispatcher that the person has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. This is going to ensure that the right people arrive and they don't make the wrong assumptions. When the emergency responders arrive, they're going to take the person to a local emergency room for assessment rather than in the back of a police car in handcuffs. So be sure that everyone involved knows the person's diagnosis so that the appropriate interventions can be made. So you're telling the dispatcher, you're telling every first responder that's on the scene. And then when they go to the hospital, you're telling every hospital person, that there is a dementia diagnosis. And don't expect that just because they are a doctor or a nurse or a first responder, that they are going to have the best way of responding and engaging with your loved one. So, you being that advocate and being that voice for your loved one is extremely important. It doesn't change just because of behavior change. So then next is repetition. And repetition is often a hot button for a lot of family caregivers. People with Alzheimer's disease may repeat words, questions, or behaviors, and this can really become quite frustrating for those who have the most contact with the person. So we're going to hear a video. It's Dr. Sam Fazio, and he addresses repetition.
Repetition is really one of the most common and also frustrating behaviors for caregivers. It's important to really just take a minute, take a breath, and really think about how you could help that person with the answer that they're looking for. It really makes no sense to sort of bump heads with them and try to correct them or try to tell them to stop asking it, because they really can't remember that they just asked you that a minute ago. So thinking about how you could provide an answer that's reassuring, even though you might be doing it over and over and over again.
And I think, avoiding correcting the person and trying to convince the person of your viewpoint does not help with repetition. So as many times as you feel like, okay, I've answered this question 30 times today, and if it goes to 31, I'm not going to be able to handle it without freaking out. Figuring out how to get yourself some even physical distance from the repetitive questioning can be helpful. So we're going to look at Anne's repetitive behavior, and we'll explore how we can apply this 4-step process to that. So Anne has recently been really concerned about an upcoming visit from her daughter. Her daughter, Katie, is not scheduled to visit for another 2 weeks, but Anne has begun to repeatedly ask her husband, Bill, when is Katie coming? Is Katie coming today? Is Katie coming this week? When's Katie coming? And Anne asks several times throughout the day, every day, nonstop, and that's how it feels to Bill. And it's begun to really wear on him. He finds that he's answering Anne impatiently, sometimes even ignoring Anne's questions. And if we think about what happened when he ignored her before and it turned aggressive, we really want to avoid that and intervene before it goes in that direction. So how do we address repetition using this 4-step process? We want to first ask ourselves those who, what, where, when, and how questions to look for triggers or patterns of the repetition. We want to stay calm and be patient. We want to accept this behavior rather than trying to fight to stop it. If you say something like, you've already asked me this question 30 times today, it's not going to make the person feel like you care, and to them, they're asking this for the first time. And we want to make sure that we're addressing any physical issues that might have arisen. So look for pain first, explore whether the person might be experiencing pain and adjust the situation to alleviate pain. Explore the physical environment for any triggers that need to be anything that needs to be changed. Call on medical professionals if the behavior has taken place suddenly. The behavior you see may be a result of an infection, such as a urinary tract infection, another medical issue, or a medication side effect. I think I probably can't say that enough. You can see a big dip in the person's cognitive level, as well as a big change in their behavior if they are, dehydrated or have an infection of some sort. So you really don't want to just write it off. You want to look into it if the behavior happens very quick. And then you're addressing those emotional needs. So focusing on the emotion that the person is expressing, whether that emotion is anxiety or frustration, say something that helps them to identify that emotional state. Sometimes just helping to name it. And keep in mind that the emotion behind the behavior may be really what is fueling that repetition. So she's having some level of anxiety or some level of kind of, she's missing the details of, when is Katie coming, but she's having that emotional reaction. She's having that emotion. We don't know if she's just excited, or if she's, feels like she's not going to have the house clean, or that, Katie's going to look at her and think, oh, her dementia has progressed. We don't know what's really, causing this level of emotion, but we want to see if we can name it. And briefly answer the person's questions or concerns, address any concerns, and repeat the same answer to help the person who may be processing your words more slowly and might not be able to retain them. So you're kind of making sure that you're, just because you said it the first time or the second time and they're asking you the question again, it doesn't mean you said it wrong. It might just mean that they need a little more repetition to be able to fully process what you're saying. And make use of any type of memory aids like notes, photos, calendars. These can help for some people, not for everyone, but even a whiteboard, something to kind of help to relieve some of that repetition. And do remember that repetition is a part of this disease process. It can help to engage the person in a purposeful activity to redirect their focus. So maybe she's excited about Katie coming, and maybe you are redirecting her to, let's go get the guest room ready for Katie's visit. Or if she's not coming for 2 weeks, you can just talk about, oh, we should talk to Katie about, make sure we get to go to her favorite restaurant while she's here, kind of trying to redirect that energy. Turn the action or behavior being displayed into an activity with a positive focus. So sometimes it helps to offer a repetitive activity like wiping a countertop, folding towels, sorting laundry. Doing something that's repetitive in nature can sometimes help to get, channel this energy that's currently being focused on repetitive questioning about her daughter. And finally, reassessing and planning for next time. Did my responses help? Just knowing that this is a symptom, it's related to the brain damage that comes with this disease progressing. And we want to do what we can to maintain an emotional distance from the behavior. That means teaching yourself to adopt a calm stance, using deep breathing, reciting a meaningful phrase or prayer or mantra in your head. Do what you can to try to stay centered on the thought that this reflects the disease. It does not reflect the person. And expect that repetition will happen again. If you anticipate it and you make a plan for it, you can prepare to handle it much better than you would if you aren't prepared. Next, we're going to talk about wandering. And at some point in the course of the disease process, approximately 60% of people with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia will wander. And this behavior may take place without warning, completely out of the blue. So many families are really unprepared for a wandering incident. So we're going to hear from Beverly, and she talks about a time when her husband, Amos, wandered from their home.
Later in this journey, and I call it a journey, he decided that he was going home to his wife. And one New Year's Eve, he looked out the window and there was a house down the street that had all the lights on, and he decided that that was his house. And it must have been, I'd say, at least 2 below zero. And he was going to leave. I had a double lock on the door, but I had left the key in, and he decided he was leaving. And I said, well, Amos, I'm your wife. No, you're not. My wife is waiting for me. And he would laugh when I said that I was his wife. So he got up and I said, Amos, I'm going to call the police if you walk out the door. And Amos, in his usual manner, said, you do what you have to do. And he walked out the door. Well, he walked out in his house shoes 2 blocks down the street, and I got in the car and drove around. It just so happened that it was a neighbor's mother, and she knew what was happening, and she talked to him, and we got him back in the car and drove him home.
I think, she mentions about seeing him and knowing, kind of where he's intending to go. And so she saw him leave the house. But if you do not know where the person is headed, when they left, you do not see them leave, but they are clearly not there, you want to call the police immediately, because wandering can be quite dangerous for someone with dementia. And I think the word wandering sometimes is a little bit misleading, because we think wandering, they're, just lost and kind of searching. But often that wandering is really goal oriented or goal directed. So we're going to apply the 4-step process to Anne's situation. And so let's hear about Anne. Anne and Bill spent the early years of their marriage in New Jersey, and they moved out of the state to their current home in California 30 years ago. Anne is constantly asking to go and visit New Jersey, and she frequently leaves the home in the morning when Bill is showering. And, she has been stating, I'm going to New Jersey. So she's been found by neighbors on many occasions at their church, on neighborhood streets. And one time she was found on a very busy intersection near their home. Their daughter, Katie, is really quite worried about any potential injury that might happen to Anne as she, is out of the home and walking on these busy streets. And Bill's really worried too, but he's at a loss for what to do. Bill is extremely logical, and he tries to explain to Anne all the reasons why they cannot visit New Jersey, why she can't really physically walk to New Jersey, and why, this is just not going to happen. He recognizes that his approach of just kind of logically explaining things to Anne is not working, and also noticing that this tends to make Anne more angry, and she's tending to wander more when she's told, no, you can't go to New Jersey. So, oh my. Sorry about that. All right. So we want to start with this 4-step process. We want to assess who, what, where, and how to identify any possible triggers, any reasons for the wandering that might not be logical to you. Walking to New Jersey is not logical to Bill, but Anne is heading to New Jersey. And join the person and accept anything that the person says about their wandering being goal directed. So if they're giving you clues about where they're headed, listen to it. Don't just say, no, you're not going to New Jersey. And then we want to look for pain first. Wandering can be an attempt to move away from pain. It can be an attempt to move away from someone or something. So if the change occurs suddenly, we want to contact the doctor for an assessment and check to see if the person might be responding to something, some difficulty with something in the immediate surroundings. And then, has there been any changes to the routine lately? Any changes in the person's pattern of exercise? We did definitely see an increase in behavior change when the pandemic first started, and, people's adult day programs were shut down, or people were, no longer going out into the community and, even shopping and doing the things that kind of were just our normal activities. And so kind of being cooped up in the house can lead to behavior change. And if the person is responding to an unmet need, hunger, thirst, having to go to the bathroom, the desire to just get away from something or someone, the desire to go home or go outside or engage with others. So kind of clue into what they're talking about in terms of goal directed, and make any changes needed to keep the person safe as you continue to assess. And then we want to address those those emotional needs. As is the person feeling bored or understimulated? Maybe it helps to name the feeling for them. You seem sad, or you look scared. And it can help to provide reassurance that the person is safe, that you're there together. And then, planning ahead for the first wandering incident, and putting some plans in place. The Alzheimer's Association has, tip sheets around kind of planning for and preparing for wandering, and how to kind of make your house wander-proof, even though not fully wander-proof. And there are, many different devices and things. Even they sell things that look like a bookcase that you hang over a front door, so it looks like a bookcase and no one's going to go out the front door if it's a bookcase and not a door. So there's ways to kind of modify the environment. And if it's possible, help the person to do what they want to do. If they want to go outside, grab your coat and go for a walk or a drive. But if it's not possible, agree that you will go and then delay it. Sure, a walk would be great, but it's almost lunchtime. So is it okay if we go after lunch? And then that might be enough to kind of eliminate that behavior. Create opportunities for some safe wandering, such as an enclosed garden, a circular walkway, maybe suggesting doing some physical things together during the times when the person typically feels the most restless. So, if it's 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's pretty much every day at 2:00 in the afternoon, maybe at 1:30 you say, hey, should we go for a walk, to try to get that energy out. And make changes to the person's surroundings that can be helpful. So that includes things like that bookcase that you put over a door, but even putting dark mats in front of doors can look like holes. And so the person might avoid trying to go out that door. Camouflaging the door, or, painting the door jamb and the door the same color as the walls, hanging a towel or a cloth over the doorknob to disguise them. There are different ways to adjust the environment to kind of help minimize wandering. It can help to provide a structured routine for the day. In doing so, you're going to be offering things for the person to plan on throughout the day, and that can alleviate boredom that could trigger wandering behavior. And sometimes a community day program is a wonderful thing to get your loved one involved in. That they're in a safe situation, they're being cared for. It provides you respite, and it also helps to structure their day. It provides supervised activities for the person to engage in. It has a high level of oversight, and that way that they're discharging some of that energy throughout the day, and it can help with sleeping during the night and avoiding wandering. We often hear, if my loved one attended a day program on Monday and Wednesday, I know Monday night, Wednesday night, they are going to sleep through the night. There's no no sleep changes on the days that they get all of their energy out and they're like socially and physically engaged. So the last little bit here is really just kind of making sure that you know about the Alzheimer's Association and about the resources available to you through the Alzheimer's Association. So no matter whether you want information or support, or you have questions about memory loss or dementia of any kind, or even if you're a professional, a researcher, a caregiver of a person with diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, or you yourself are someone diagnosed with Alzheimer's or related dementia, the Alzheimer's Association has resources for you and is available to help when you need them. I think you can see on the slide our website, which has alz.org, has so many programs and resources that I'm still discovering. I've been working for the association for almost 10 years and I'm still discovering new things. The one I would recommend for anyone who is providing family caregiver for someone with dementia is the Alzheimer's Navigator. You can just go to the alz.org and under the resources tab, there's Alzheimer's Navigator. Basically, it asks you a series of questions, and based on your responses, it puts together a care plan, local resources, things to consider, and it can focus on safety, it can focus on activities, it can focus on a lot of different things. So I would definitely recommend checking that one out. And then there's our 800 number, which is 800-272-3900. Available 24/7 and staffed by master's level clinicians. So when you need an answer to a question, I even say, when I do a presentation, if a question pops in your head 20 minutes after we've finished this presentation today, you can call that 800 number and ask any question that you have. You can also call them on Saturday at middle of the evening. So it's not just business hours when things happen, especially behaviors. So knowing that there is someone there to talk to 24/7 is very helpful. And this program is just one of the many programs that we offer. I know we'll be working with Shireen to offer our effective communication strategies class, which really pairs well with this curriculum of behaviors, because behavior is a form of communication. And so strengthening your communication skills cannot hurt. And if you are interested in getting involved in volunteering, the Alzheimer's Association runs on volunteer support. So you can use your voice, your motivation, your interests, and your skills to help find new treatments and to help enhance services for those affected by dementia. I think the one thing I really would like to highlight on the bottom right of that slide is Alzheimer's Association Trial Match, and that is a clinical trials matching program. You used to have to go out and do all the legwork to try to find any kind of clinical trials. This, you basically contact Trial Match either through that 800 number or through our website, and they will match you with clinical trials available in your area. I myself am a member of Trial Match, and I don't travel to do any of the clinical trials, but I just do some computer-based, baseline 6 months, memory assessments, because I am a well individual with a family history of dementia. So you don't have to be someone with a dementia diagnosis to participate in clinical trials. So in our final video for this presentation, we're going to hear from Sandra, and she talks about not always knowing the right way to respond to her mother.
Everyone's situation, I'm sure, is different. My mom was a shaker and a mover. She would do whatever needed to be done. She loved to cook. She can't cook anymore. She loved to keep her house clean. She can't do that anymore. And it's tough. I don't have all the answers. When she's sitting there and my dad's cooking, I don't always know what to do. I have to learn to be comfortable with that. And if I may say, that's a big part of this, learning to be really comfortable with your own limitations, learning to be comfortable with the fact that you don't know the answer, learning to be comfortable with you're in a situation and you think you need to give her something, but you don't know what it is. You're taking her around the flowers and she's not responding. You're taking her for a walk and she's really not there with you. I don't always know what to do, but I try.
I don't think I could sum it up any better than that, but that presence of just kind of the person knowing that you're there and you're attempting to try to connect and be there for them will be felt by the person that you're providing care for. And even if they're not able to convey that to you or able to, you're not able to fix it, that little bit of just reassurance and presence will be very helpful. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's any questions for the last 7-ish minutes of a 90-minute presentation.
So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will address them. So far, we have one question. Let me just get to that. But again, please put anything else in. So This question is, do you provide these training materials in any other languages like Spanish, Tagalog, Mandarin? And also, do you provide any materials on addressing caregiver burnout?
Yes. So yes to both things. So we have this same presentation in Spanish, in Mandarin, and Cantonese, and I think a few other languages. And we even have a section of our website where you can go to alz.org/Spanish, alz.org/Chinese, and it will translate the entire website into that language. So yes is the short answer to that question. And we also have quite a bit of material around caregiver burnout, caregiver stress checks, and kind of identifying the caregiver burnout in yourself or in someone else that you care about. And we have those same materials in multiple languages. And also our 800 number is available in over 200 languages. So they have staff to cover 200 languages at the helpline.
That's fabulous. So just to refer everyone again to the chat, I put in again the helpline phone number. I'll just repeat it, but it's in the chat. It's 800-272-3900. And the website that you can obtain all this information in multiple languages is www.alz.org. So again, in the chat, but it seems like for follow-up and further questions, those are really excellent resources. And of course, my email is also in the chat, so you can follow up. I don't see any further questions. If anyone has a question, these are our last few minutes, so take advantage of Lauren's expertise. I just want to thank you, Lauren. There was just a wealth of information, great specificity, nice concrete examples. So I feel like, you know, we all learned a lot. Honestly, a lot of the techniques you described could be used with many different kinds of people. You know, so not just folks suffering from Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia.
Absolutely. And I definitely recommend, because there is so much material with this class, you can take this class over and over again. And I will put it into the chat, but there's even a section of our website where you could watch a recorded version of this. So you know, if you are wanting, like, what was that slide talking about? Or, you know, what was Lauren talking about? You can always watch them, you know, at your leisure as well.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because this is also being recorded, and it will be on the Marin County Free Library YouTube channel within 2 weeks. So another opportunity to review it, because there just was a lot of material.
Absolutely.
Well, if there are no questions, I am going to say thank you very, very much to Lauren and everyone for attending. I hope you have a really enjoyable day. Looks like it's a sunny one out there. So I think I am just going to end the meeting now and wish you all well. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.